Hello. So this video is going to be a performance review of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, performed at the Globe Theatre, Shakespeare's Globe, and directed by Sean Holmes. This is a production that was Wild West themed, Wild West costumed, involved six shooters instead of rapiers, etc., etc., which I don't inherently have a problem with, although I do think it actually introduces a significant issue in plot terms, which I will talk about. The production was good. Having seen it the day after The Crucible, I was slightly disappointed because I did think The Crucible was better. There was some bright points in Romeo and Juliet, but there were also some things that didn't work for me. So the basic plot of Romeo and Juliet, I think most people have a broad sense of this. You have these two warring families in Verona. You have the Capulets, which is Juliet's family, and you have the Montagues, which is Romeo's family. And they have this ancient grudge that is never really specified in the play. It kind of doesn't matter what it is. The point is that the two families hate one another, and every time they encounter one another in public, they clash. The prince is not keen on this arrangement because it means people are regularly just getting murdered in the streets of Verona. And in the interests of keeping civil order, the prince basically says anybody who is caught brawling between these two families will be put to death. Romeo and his friends, Mercutio and Benvolio in particular, decide that they are going to crash this party that Lord Capulet is holding. And Romeo immediately abandons his deep, true love for Rosalind, which occupies the entire first portion of the play, when he sees Juliet. He falls deeply and truly in love with her. She falls deeply and truly in love with him. And the reason I keep putting scare quotes around this is because they're fucking teenagers. They don't know anything about anything. The play repeatedly emphasizes that Juliet is 13 years old. Incidentally, Lola Shalom, who played Juliet in this production, she's not old, or she doesn't appear to be old, at least, but she does not appear to be 13. I would say, based on her appearance, which is, of course, a terrible way to judge these types of things, she's probably in her late 20s, early 30s. But if you got this person standing center stage and Lady Capulet, played by Leah Deguerre, and the nurse, played by Jamie Rose Monk, are both like, yeah, she's 13. Soon, in like a couple of weeks, she'll be 14. And you're like, nah, son. That's not a 13-year-old. I've seen 13-year-olds. I actually haven't seen... I mean, I guess I saw 13-year-olds when I was one. I don't regularly interact with 13-year-olds, but I'm reasonably certain I can make an educated guess about whether or not someone is around 13 or 14. But this is a huge problem with Romeo and Juliet, right? Is that you very rarely have someone cast who is actually 13, in part because it's a very challenging role to do. So there's a little bit of that sort of like, this is a TV show set in high school, but all of the actors are in their 40s kind of thing. There is that sort of weird disconnect that I mean, again, magic of theater, willing suspension of our disbelief, etc., whatever. Cool. Good, good, good. Love it, love it, love it. So, anyway, Romeo and Juliet, they fall in love. They can't be together because their families literally try to murder each other whenever they're in proximity to one another. And so they basically have a secret marriage. Friar Lawrence, in this case played by John Lightbody, marries them on the sly. And then Tybalt, who is Juliet's cousin, played by, let me find him on this cast list, Callum Callahan. Tybalt, who recognized Romeo at the party where Romeo and Juliet met, he basically goes looking for Romeo to do some murdering. Romeo, now married to his cousin, and so kind of part of the Capulet family, is like, hey man, can't we all just get along? But Romeo's friend Mercutio, who's the cousin to the prince, is like, time to fight. Romeo tries to stop them, and Mercutio is stabbed to death by Tybalt, where he says his famous line, "A plague upon both your houses, for they have made worms meat of me." It's a great line. And actually, that was one of the really interesting bits of the production, because Mercutio is really the first person who dies on stage in this play. Mercutio, played by Michael Alcock, who I actually thought was fantastic. I thought he was one of the top two performers in this, along with Jamie Rose Monk, who played the nurse. So one of the things that they did is they have Mercutio die, and with the exception of Paris, who was played by Joe Reynolds, with the exception of Paris, everybody milked the fuck out of their death scenes. For Alcock, it kind of worked because he spread this out over dialogue, but there was bits of like collapsing and now I've fallen and I'm dying. But then they did this thing where like the ghosts of characters or the spirits of characters sort of return. So after he dies, and Romeo and Benvolio are sort of in shock at Mercutio's death, Alcock rose up and gave those famous final lines of Mercutio, "A plague on both your houses, they have made worms meat of me." And then he leaves, and it actually quite worked. And later, when Tybalt is killed by Romeo, we eventually get a similar sort of thing where he rises and his ghost walks. And then at the end, when Juliet is in the crypt, we have the bodies of Tybalt, Mercutio, and then Paris after Romeo kills him, who participate in this stylized dance with the seemingly dead body of Juliet. So I actually thought that was an interesting performance choice. I give Sean Holmes full credit for that. Very, very interesting. Very, very cool. So anyway, Juliet. So Romeo is now banished from Verona because Tybalt had started the fight. Romeo is not going to be executed, even though that is what the prince had said was going to be the policy. But Romeo is banished. Friar Lawrence, played by John Lightbody in this production, comes up with this scheme where basically Romeo will go to Mantua and just wait there, and eventually he will be able to go back to Verona. The banishment will likely be lifted, which was the norm for banishments for these types of things. And so Romeo should be able to return and be with Juliet. Juliet comes up with her own plan, or she sort of comes up with her own problem because her father, Lord Capulet, played by Gormley, basically is like, you're marrying Paris on Thursday. I don't give a fuck if you like it. So she goes to Friar Lawrence, and Friar Lawrence is like, all right, you're going to take this potion. It will make it seem like you are dead. For 42 hours or whatever it is, they will put your body in the crypt, and then when you wake up, I, with Romeo, will come and get you. We will take you away. The two of you can go to Mantua. You can live long, happy lives. And this is where the play really starts to unravel, because Friar Lawrence sends a messenger to Romeo in Mantua. But the problem is that this messenger can't get into Mantua. Mantua is worried about the plague, so they have closed off the city. Now, the plot problem with Romeo and Juliet as such is that Romeo's friend does actually get into Mantua, and he's like, Juliet's dead. So Romeo hears that Juliet is dead, but he does not hear from Friar Lawrence. This is what the plan is. She's not actually dead. This is a potion. Now, this is where I have a problem with any sort of more modernized version of Romeo and Juliet. In the, call it 16th century, this isn't a historical play, so it's not set in a clear time period necessarily, but 16th century or before, if Friar Lawrence sends a messenger and that messenger can't get through, there's no real other way to get word to Romeo. If this is in the Old West, 1880s, say, 1890s, something like this, there's telegraph. Mantua is not going to cut their telegraph lines because they're concerned about the plague. You could do that, right? You can fucking contact Romeo. Now, it's possible a telegraph might miss him. That's true. But, like, anything else, like, anything in terms of the era of mass communication or almost semi-instantaneous, widespread communications, the whole conceit of Romeo has heard that Juliet is dead, but he has not heard about the plan, really sort of falls apart. You set Romeo and Juliet in the modern era, Friar Lawrence, just pick up a fucking telephone, right? And the whole thing that leads to the mutual suicides falls apart. So this is one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the whole, let's modernize Romeo and Juliet. Let's put it in anything after, say, the 1850s, where telegraph becomes widespread. But anyway, Friar Lawrence's dude doesn't get through. Romeo's friend does come and tell him that Juliet is dead. Romeo goes back to Verona, to her crypt. His plan is to poison himself. He ends up encountering Paris there. He kills Paris. Then he kills himself. Then Juliet wakes up. Romeo has drank all of the poison, so she can't use poison, so she stabs herself, and then the play basically just ends. The prince and everybody else, the Capulets and the Montagues, show up, and the prince is like, look, you fucking killed all these people for your stupid little grudge. Stop it. And that's the end. So I actually don't like Romeo or Juliet as characters in general. Romeo in this place, played by Roweed Asade, and Juliet, as I think it said, played by Lola Shalom. I don't like them as characters. I think they basically suck as characters. They're each continually being like, I'm going to kill myself now. Oh, I've had a minor inconvenience in my life. Time for suicide. Shut the fuck up. You're 13. Get over it. Get over yourselves. And I say that, and I'm 100% conscious as I say that there are real issues with mental illness and psychological distress that do lead to suicide, to suicide attempts, to suicidal ideation, etc., etc. And those are not things to be lightly dismissed. I am also aware that teenagers and sort of preteens, etc., experience significant hormonal changes, psychological changes, etc., all of which can and do contribute to significant issues of depression, anxiety, etc. I experienced it myself. I know that it is true, but it's so over the top feeling in this play. I don't really find it that compelling. Like, the fact that they do eventually commit suicide, I actually find less compelling than if they had not just spent the previous 2.5 hours, since this is a 2 hour and 50-minute production with a 20-minute interval. They'd not spent the previous 2.5 hours with every third line being like, I will kill myself. I don't know. That's maybe an idiosyncratic, maybe a bad reaction, bad understanding of it, whatever it is. But I don't care. It feels excessive to me, and it feels less tragic in some ways that they do eventually kill themselves over this loss, because they seem primed to do it at every step. But what I did like was actually some of the other characters. Quite a lot. I really liked Mercutio, again, played by Michael Alcock, who I thought was fantastic. He was incredibly funny. He did great crowd work. And that's something I really, really like. And the same thing for Jamie Rose Monk. She was incredibly funny as the nurse. She brought this sort of almost sort of Cockney, like, wise slave energy to it. And when I say wise slave, I'm talking about like the Roman comic trope of a slave character who is more intelligent, more insightful, etc., than those with a higher social standing. This wisdom that is sort of rooted in practical experience, practical knowledge, worldviews, etc. I thought she was incredibly good with the way that she presented herself, the way that she spoke, the way that she basically brought this character to life, and the way that she related to other people in it. I thought it was fantastically done.